Can you swivel the screen round? I'm just going to check the framing. Ah, it looks fine. I'd do it a bit closer, but up to you. The white balance, yes. And also I'm probably going to sit back like this, so...
Relax.
And then I'll come back like this. And then I'll sit back like this. And I'll go... Maybe. This is a very appropriate interview, because we have some video activists from France, and they're going to interview me about... What are you interviewed about? My name is Hamish. I work for a not-for-profit in the UK called Undercurrents, and we've been producing video for social change to make the world a better place at grassroots level for about 10-15 years. Undercurrents was set up in, I think, 1992 or 93, and we produced... it was set up by 4 people, 2 activists and 2 TV producers. And the activists were really frustrated that the TV wasn't showing what was happening at these really dynamic, exciting protests. It was the anti-roads movement, you know, where these huge squatted streets and creative, you know, the living in tree houses and, you know, trying to stop the development of these really bad roads. So they decided then that they'd actually make, after failing to get these fantastic images onto television, they decided to make their own television. And they looked around for how to distribute it, and they discovered that everybody had VHS players in their houses, and it was very cheap to duplicate VHS tapes. So they did an hour-long news report of lots of different stories from around Britain and around the world, and put it out as Undercurrents 1, which was the first news magazine we did. And then over the next 8 years we produced 10 more Undercurrents news magazines every 3 to 6 months. And they created a sensation, because it was the first time that all these protests around the world actually saw people doing very similar things, and they learnt strategies and techniques and ways of working from each other and inspired each other. So it kind of helped to ferment the really creative protest movement, which became Reclaim the Streets and lots of other great things. Undercurrents have been involved in setting up in a precursor to Indie Media in June the 18th, which was a big riot in the City of London, and they used the same code, the active base, which then was used for Indie Media. They used that code for people to put up self-publishing videos and photographs, etc. So, you know, it's kind of the precursor of Indie Media in Seattle was the June the 18th. So we were involved in that, so we were all very excited about it. And then Seattle came along, which was a really big, very effective protest, and Indie Media was born, and then this Indie Media spread from country to country all around the world. And I thought, hey, this is great. I'm going to, you know, I've got all these skills, and, you know, basically I was teaching people how to make films, so I thought I would go out a few days early to Genoa, get involved in the media centre, set up some editing machines, and then, you know, grab all the people with camcorders and, you know, teach them how to tell stories using film, and get content out there with, you know, this streaming video. This video you could upload to the web and then people would watch. So so I arrived. I was with my friend Marion in a little camper van. We arrived a few days early, found the media centre. There was no video editing machines there. All the machines were running Linux, which didn't work for video editing. So actually we requisitioned 2 machines, and we had to install Windows on them, because it's the only way you could actually edit video. We were so busy in the Indie Media Centre that we actually, when I arrived, I looked, because I realised we were going to be there, you know, 24 hours a day. I looked for a place to stay, and up on the roof there was a little space at the top of the stairs, so me and Marion put our sleeping bags and took that space. And then there was a big roof space, and on the roof I looked around, because, you know, I thought, you know, there's a big, you know, Italy has a very bad reputation, and the violence at these protests was growing and growing. So I thought, you know, if you're going to set, you know, we're going to have all these films coming in here, this is obviously a place where the police might raid. It's where all the evidence is. So I looked around for places to stash tapes and to hide, basically, if the police ever did raid the building, or if, you know, they tried to come in and take the tapes. Yeah, we had experience of police, and the Italian police were very famous for destroying cameras and stealing tapes. So, so I found this broken window into a water tower, and yeah, it looked like a good place to hide if anything horrible ever happened. Yeah, over those days the repression got harder and harder, and the violence levels got really, you know, the police were driving at people with tanks, firing tear gas at people, the protesters were retaliating with petrol bombs. There was literally pitched battles. I'd been involved in, the white bloc had been coming through town, and that turned into a huge battle when the police attacked them. So I was there, and I was filming right in the front line, me and Marion, my straw hat and my sandals. And I had a scarf, a purple scarf, So it was very English. I was in the front line of this riot with bricks coming one way, tear gas cannons the other. So it was kind of very surreal. And yeah, we'd just get tear gassed every so often and had to back out and put water in our eyes and then straight back to the front. But there was this feeling of repression, got more and more and more during the evening, and people started to leave, you know, because there's been this shooting, there's been these riots, these pitched battles, and they're just feeling the police had to do something to kind of gain, you know, to get some face, you know, they had to show that it had actually done something. So there was this feeling that something horrible was going to happen. And you know, a lot of people thought, well, it's not going to happen here, this is the liberal organising space, this is the media centre. So, you know, but a lot of people also thought, you know, that something awful was going to happen. So people started to leave until there was perhaps only half the number of people left in the building that would normally be there. And I was editing this film about the Black Bloc and the hippies, and there were these screams. The police are here, the police are here. So I rushed to the window. I didn't see anything at that point, so I rushed up onto the roof, and I saw the police. Hang on, let me just think what happened then, actually. I rushed to the window, and actually I saw some police outside. My friend Marion, I gave her the tapes and said, there's a place to hide up on the roof. If you go up to the roof and then through this window, there's a place you can hide. So she went up on the roof, and then I looked out to see if the police were coming into the building, because you could look above the doorway, and the police weren't coming to the building. So then I went up onto the roof and filmed, you know, 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes of footage of the police really violently entering the building next door with no resistance. And then I started to be worried. There was a police helicopter going around with a spotlight. I started to be worried that actually the police might be in the building I was in. If they were raiding this building, the next door, they're bound to be raiding our building too. So then I went downstairs, and there was people panicking and building barricades, but very ineffectual. So I kind of said, calm down, they're not in the building. So I don't think they're in the building. I'd looked and I couldn't see them in the building. So then I went down the stairs, and I met this fat policeman in full body armour with his truncheon going up the stairs. And I just turned around and flew up the stairs as if I had wings, saying, they're in the building, they're in the building. And I got to the roof, and the police helicopter had the spotlight on the roof, so I had to wait till the spotlight came off the roof. The helicopter was very low, and this bright spotlight, and the whole building was shaking from the helicopter. I waited for the helicopter to move away, and then I ran across the roof and through the window and down along the water tower, saying, Marion, Marion, are you here? And silence. And I got all the way to the end, and it was dark, so I had to turn my camera in night shot mode, and I looked around the corner with this terrified face going, shh. So Marion was hiding with the tapes. So we stayed in the water tower for 3 or 4 hours as the police searched the roof, and there was these screams of assassini, assassini, you know, as if people were being murdered, you know, for hours. It's scary. We're up on the roof in an old water tower, hiding behind some big systems. The cops have raided the building next door. Hundreds of cops smashed down the doors, charged in. I went downstairs to film. I filmed some from the roof, and I went downstairs to film, and I met a very large fat cop on the stairs. He seemed not aggressive, so I just ran like hell, came straight up here, and hid. So we're hiding. And we stayed there until the helicopter went away, and then we looked out, and there were some people moving around the roof, so we came out and I interviewed the people on the roof about what happened. I then went downstairs and filmed some of the destruction in the building, and then went next door and filmed the terrible devastation in the building next door. You know, blood everywhere, everything destroyed. And then I came back and filmed the legal support room where the hard drives had been ripped out of the cameras, and I interviewed one of the people there to say, you know, the police have taken the hard drives. We stayed the night in the building because we didn't feel safe to leave. And then we left the tapes hidden in the water tower. And then we went to this bar and we saw all the weapons. These Black Bloc, and they've captured all these terrorists, and we just thought, shit, we're in real trouble here. You know, we're framed, you know. So then actually we left we went to visit a friend of mine who I phoned up, a friend who I'd met in the demonstration, who was an ex-girlfriend who was living outside town. We drove out there, and then we hid the tapes. Actually, I think before we left, we hid the tapes inside the structure of the camper van. It was made of metal tubes, and they had sort of holes, so we pushed the tapes and put them in plastic bags and pushed them into these spaces so they couldn't be found. And we went out and stayed the night at the friend's house, and then we plotted on the map how we could get out, because we'd heard stories that at the borders everyone was being stopped and searched. So we plotted how to get out, and Marion looked on the map and there was this tiny border post which over the mountains. So we pretended to be tourists. We had this whole story, we're just here as tourists, it's a lovely trip along the coast, etc. So we drove out of town, and we saw every time we saw a police here, we kind of started chatting and smiling and ignored them, and went up into the mountains, and there was I think 2 border guards there, and we told them the story of how we were tourists and went over the border. So we got out with the tapes. I got back to the UK, and I put the images up on Indie Media, which Sky actually downloaded them, and he actually found himself being beaten in the images, and he contacted me. I'd known him before. So Sky actually found the beatings. Actually, I found the beatings too, but it was just kind of a random beating, and it only became such a big issue when Sky really pushed it. When he recognised it was him being beaten. It took a little time to recognise who actually was being beaten on the ground, because it was just a fleeting image. The camera moves from here to here, and then it all got caught up in the court case, and really much Sky pushed it. I think we did some enhancements of the tapes for him, and then I had to come back and testify twice. Once to the prosecutor, where I had to hand over the original tape and explain how I shot it, such things, so it's part of the evidence. And then I had to come back again for the court case where I had to testify, which was an interesting experience. It was kind of a bit surreal. The police lawyers just seemed immensely stupid. I have to say that. They asked the most stupid questions, and I was quite rude to them. I was saying, that's a stupid question, because and it was actually, I quite enjoyed testifying, because it's your time to tell the truth. This did happen, and actually that obviously there was no projectiles. The police were not attacked, and you could say very definitely that what these lawyers were saying or suggesting was wrong. So that was quite good. And the video really does prove it. Really, it proves so many things. The video that the police attacked a defenceless person on the ground repeatedly and hospitalised Sky before they got to the building. They say they were so violent because they were attacked in the street, and they were attacked viciously when they tried to get into the building, and the video showed that A, they attacked first, and B, there was no violence from the protesters, and the police were very violent to get into the building. You kind of, if you approach filming in a nice way, I always smile at the policemen and nod at them, no matter how violent they are. I go hello and carry on filming, and the protesters are the same. I always smile at them. I try to create an eye contact with them so they know I'm a human being. And once I've done that, pretty much you can then continue, but you've got to make eye contact with the police, otherwise they'll hit you, and with the protesters too, otherwise they'll probably hit you. So it's a question of just making eye contact with, being a human being, not just being a camera person, and smiling and being happy in the middle of this mayhem. And I think that helps a lot. And wearing a straw hat and sandals. I've been involved in quite a few court cases, and each time the video has been key. A friend of mine was prosecuted for damaging a building and threatening passers-by, and all he'd done is climb up on the roof very safely with lots of climbing gear, very experienced, and drop a banner. And so and so the police had said he'd done this and done this and done this, and we showed the video in the court, and he hadn't done that, and he'd been very respectful, and he was a good climber, and so the case was dropped. He was found not guilty. So again and again, the video evidence is very good at stopping people, because the police just make it up, and they're so used to just making up stories, and you can show the video in court, and it just makes the police look very, very stupid, which of course they are. So it's great. So keep that camera rolling.